I spent a lot of time crying and just feeling really stupid, honestly. Like, why can't I get it? Everybody else gets it. This is like Spanish 101, right? And I probably could have just given up, but I didn't. There's got to be another way. Sure, I'm terrible at Spanish, but there's got to be another way to learn it. So there I am in Costa Rica, realizing I don't understand anything because I don't speak Spanish and still crying a lot. But little by little, I started to get a couple of words and I was in Costa Rica and I really, just like this whole new world and new possibilities. And so that is really how it began.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lisbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Lisbeth Meredith is an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and strivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
Folks, if you are with me on YouTube, you can see my ridiculous background, and it is the Northern Lights. And that's because I've been thinking a lot about Alaska lately, my original home. Born in Kentucky, raised in Alaska, living in East Tennessee. And you can imagine sometimes I get super sad about missing my roots. If you love documentaries like I do, or audiobooks like I do, may I recommend this week on Hulu? So this week is like September the 9th of 2025, or at least that's today's date. Hulu released Blood and Myth. Blood and Myth. And that is a fantastic documentary on a true crime case that occurred in Alaska many years ago. And it is produced by a fabulous Indigenous storyteller, and I loved the original audiobook. So if you like audiobooks, perhaps you can listen to Midnight Sun, sun being spelled S-O-N, and then the Hulu documentary, Blood and Myth. And that's why I have the Northern Lights behind me right now. I was recently visited by my oldest daughter, who came and hung out with me in Tennessee and just made me realize how much I miss living closer. I don't want to live in Alaska, but closer to my daughters. And so it was such a joy to have her. We got to do very basic, ridiculous things that we both love. And I could juggle some working, teaching school from home and doing touristy things, doing mom things with my child and loving every minute of it. I have my youngest daughter visiting in October, and again, so very grateful. And so very grateful to have Regina here today as my guest. Regina Winkle-Bryan is the founder of Bold Spirit Travel. And I know I introduced this a little later, so I won't belabor the point, but I was so fortunate to get connected with her in June. In June of 2025, as I was trying to find contributors for Unmapped, the solo women's travel anthology. Now we have all the contributors we need, going through the editing process as we speak. So I did some editing myself. Now I have a proofreader that's amazing, and I'm excited to have this out to you in October of 2025. I hope whatever you are doing, that you're taking time to appreciate the change of season, the people that you care about, and the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of stress in life, but this might be the best day that we have yet. Life changes on a dime, and I would never want to take that for granted. I hope that you are enjoying the end of 2025. We're in the final quarter, are we not? Just about. So exciting. It's been a year of growth and struggle and joy and fun. And I, for one, am excited to see what comes next. And soon to have unmapped out to you. Thank you so much for being with me. Thanks for supporting this journey. If you like the podcast, please, by all means, share it with a friend. That helps so much because otherwise I feel like, what am I doing here with my time? I don't have that much time, and it takes a lot of resources to produce a podcast and bring these great guests to you. So please share it with a friend, text it to them, let me know via Facebook author page and or on YouTube, make a comment. Let me know that the podcast means something to you. I am eternally grateful for the amazing people that I have met on this show. Thanks so much for being here. And let us begin with Regina. For sisters and brothers, I am looking forward to introducing you to Regina Winkle-Bryan. And Regina, I met through Podmatch. And I need to mention more often how many great folks I have been meeting from Podmatch during the last couple of years. Podmatch is a lot like Match.com for podcasts and podcast hosts. It's a great place where you get to look at someone's profile. Do they match? Do they talk about the things that your podcast speaks to? And of course, mine is on resilience and healing and sometimes trauma. And with that, I met, or rather, I quote unquote met Regina. And she is the owner now. She's been a travel writer for a long time. But she owns Bold Spirit Travel that features helping women travel alone in a very safe environment and seeing their world. A lot of times you hear from women saying, I wish that I would have traveled when I was young. That's what I used to say. I wish I would have traveled when I was young. I wish that I had the courage to get on a plane by myself or in the car by myself or just do the things that have been on my bucket list, but maybe it's not on my partner's bucket list, my husband, wife, whatever, or I'm the only one I know who wants to see more of the world. Well, there are always workarounds and there are always communities. And I have met so many neat travelers through social media groups. Well, even Podmatch, I've met some great ones, but also there are some Facebook groups, some meetups, other things or how to reach your goals, whatever they may be. And in this case, Regina has such an interesting story. So I do look forward to seeing her very much in just a second. In other news, I have been doing so much more talking about writing than I have actually been doing writing. And so that is important for me to rectify. I write a lot. I edit all the time because I teach. But I need to create space for my next projects. Solo Women Travel Anthology, and then my travel memoir after Antarctica in December. So anyhow, I thought if I confessed it to you, you could hold my feet to the fire. I look forward to seeing how Regina first began, because she began, I think, at a pretty young age, becoming a travel writer. So I want to get her tips and tricks. And let me know what you think of the podcast. It's always helpful to hear from you. Join the newsletter list at lameredith.com or find me on social media. I am more active on my author Facebook page and LinkedIn. Regina Winkle-Bryan, thank you for being here on Persistence U today. I am so interested in the life that you've built, but many, many things. So thanks for taking the time.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my, it's my pleasure. I was reading about you that you absolutely always wanted, you have always been interested in the world around you. And, today you have a successful travel business. But before that, can you tell me a little bit about what it was about travel that sounded interesting to you and a trip that may have, or that did really help transform you into the person you are today?
Absolutely. Yes, I have always been very restless and just, wanted to get out of Dodge and see what's out there. That's just part of my personality, I think. And eventually, when I was teenager, so this is quite a while ago, I just for some reason, really wanted to learn Spanish, and it didn't make any sense. I didn't know anybody really who was using Spanish in a way that, was changing their life. I just had this dream, this, I have to learn Spanish. And so I started to take classes, and I was really a terrible student. Was not a natural. I did not pick it up easily. And I spent a lot of time crying and just feeling really stupid, honestly. Like, why can't I get it? Everybody else gets it. This is like Spanish 101, right? And I probably could have just given up, but I didn't. And kind of this persistence and this has followed me throughout my life and in my business too, which I started right before COVID. Don't give up, right? Okay, there's got to be another way. Sure, I'm terrible at Spanish, but there's got to be another way to learn it. And maybe it's just not in the classroom. Maybe this is just through a textbook. Maybe that's just not how I do this. So I said, I know what I'll do. I'll go and be in an immersion program and live with a family. I can only speak Spanish. So there I am in Costa Rica, realizing I don't understand anything because I don't speak Spanish and still crying a lot. But little by little, I started to get a couple of words and I was in Costa Rica and I really, just like this whole new world and new possibilities. And so that is really how it began. Still wasn't, fluent at all. Went back again. I said, I know what I'll do. I'll work in Spanish. Then I'll get it. And so I worked at a cloud forest school. Some of your listeners may know this area of Costa Rica. It's called Monteverde, and it's a cloud forest, very unique ecosystem. And it was this bilingual school, and we'd speak in Spanish and English. And so another 6 months living in a country where you have to speak Spanish every day or you just can't get by, right? And so little by little, and that really solidified my love for Central America and travel. Because anytime I wasn't working, I would go and explore, and let's go to this beach and let's check out another country. Let's go to Nicaragua. It's right there, Honduras. And so after that, I moved to Guatemala. And I
Okay.
there. And I lived in Guatemala for 2 years. Again, trying to, and eventually I could speak Spanish. Was I great? No, but I was able to have a job, write email, and one thing led to the next. Loved Guatemala. Highly recommend it for anybody listening who hasn't been there. And then I moved to Spain.
Wow.
I speak Spanish, so I'll move to Spain and I'll work in Spain. And I moved to Barcelona, and I know somebody listening shaking their head saying, but they don't speak Spanish. They speak Catalan in Barcelona. That's the language of Catalonia,
Okay.
which I did not know. But hey, now
Live and learn.
that's pretty much my philosophy. And I think philosophy for a lot of us, you'll figure it out. And if your first approach isn't working, there's a workaround, probably. Be creative with how you approach learning and discovering and meeting that goal that you have, whatever it is, whether it's language or travel, whatever. So I lived in Spain for 10 years. Also, it's a different kind of Spanish. It's Castilian, so the words are different, so the grammar is different. So then there's a whole learning process there. Through all those travels, eventually, much later, I realized, hey, I could take people to these places that I've been. And so I started a travel company. And part of that was, living in Spain, I ended up working as a writer, and I would cover these stories about Spain or other European countries. And one of the assignments that I had was to walk the Camino de Santiago. People probably know it from the movie The Way, or there's lots of books about it. It's a pilgrimage trail that cuts across the northern part of Spain. And actually, there's many Caminos. One comes from Portugal. They come from different places, but that's the one that most people know. So I did part of that for a story that I was writing for a magazine. And years later, when I started Bold Spirit, my travel company, I said, I'm going to take people on the Camino because that was such a magical, transformative trip for me, even though it came through my work. And a lot of this experience came through working, working in Spanish and then being connected, having these opportunities because I spoke the language. And, you know, one thing leads to the next. You see it when you look back, right? But in the moment, you're just trying to figure out your next move.
It's so interesting that you had this burning, like this goal that wouldn't go away when you were just a kid of like, I want to learn Spanish. And it wasn't easy, but once you did it, it unlocked a whole lot of opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And it's a weird thing that I wanted that so badly. And like I said, it really didn't make much sense. But it really changed the whole trajectory of my life. And I ended up meeting my husband eventually. I'd lived in Spain for about 5 years or so. And then I met my current, my only, my current, and we met in Spanish, and he does speak English, but that language opened that door as well.
Oh, that's
It's
wonderful.
such a gift, if you can learn a language, and I was pretty, much older by the time I was trying to learn a language, but especially if you can do it as a child, or if that's a gift that you can give your children, being bilingual.
A lot of advantages.
I think so. Certainly has been for me. And now, with my business, we do the Camino de Santiago, but we also do places that I live. So Barcelona, my favorite place in the world is north of Barcelona. It's called the Costa Brava. It's actually where people know Salvador Dali, the painter. That's where he was born. That's where he lived. You can go visit his home there. And it's this beautiful, inspiring landscape. It's this kind of hotbed of creativity when it comes to food and art and architecture and history. And it's on the Mediterranean Sea, and you can go swimming. And anyways, I
Beautiful.
recommend that area. So we take people there, and it's just because I lived in these places, and I want to show them off. I want people to know about them.
I like that you're able to. So now you live back in the United States, but you're able to keep your finger into that world that's your second home in Spain, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do consider it to be my second home. And, maybe someday I'll go back. I'd love that. But I'm from the Pacific Northwest originally, and that's where I am these days. I eventually, after all those moves, so, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Spain, I did want to come back and be close to my family. I miss them, my parents. So I'm here, and this is a beautiful place to be too. And we do some hiking trips around here for guests, but mostly we do overseas trips.
Okay.
And, we only work with women. We do a couple of co-ed trips just because I get some requests, but mostly all of our trips are just for women. And it's all about, it's really all about connection and bringing women together. So especially solo travelers. And you and I were talking about what it's like to be a solo traveler. I've been a solo traveler for a long time. All that Costa Rica, trying to learn Spanish, blah, 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 all that. I did it alone. And I was very scared, honestly. You're stepping into the unknown. You don't speak the language. You don't know where things are. How do I even use now I have phones, but how do I even make a call? Everything's different. Trying to figure out the currency conversion. It's frightening at first to take that big leap. So I understand what that feels like. And a lot of the people who come with us are solo women, and maybe they haven't traveled at all, or all the trips that they've done have been with a spouse or with family, so that feels a lot different than getting on the plane by yourself.
Absolutely. And it's so terrifying. It is not necessarily, depending on one's generation, it's not what we were prepared to do as women, to put ourselves at the top of the priority list and choose something. And, people, when you tell your friend as a woman, I'm going to go to such and such place, the first thing you hear from your friends and family is, that's so dangerous. It's so dangerous to go alone. That's just, you don't get a lot of encouragement necessarily, depending on the generation, about solo travel. Have you seen some opportunities? Have you had opportunities and clients that you've seen some transformation in after they've gone through something and they've chosen to do a trip?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just think with every trip, it's like anything, right? That you're nervous about.
Mhm.
And with every trip, it gets easier. You know, you get into the practice of, oh, I know how to navigate this now. And I know what it feels like to check into the hotel by myself or go out to dinner by myself, you know. And as far as women who have come with us, yeah, I hear a lot. I've always wanted to travel, but it's usually husband, but my husband doesn't want to go anywhere. And I thought we were going to travel together once we both retired. That was always the plan. We're retired. He doesn't want to go anywhere. And I'm sick of waiting and I'm going to do it. And I'm nervous about doing it myself. And I think that's a really good stepping stone with group trips like what we do, but also even taking a class or doing a retreat, the language exchange, like what I was talking about. Once you get there, eventually you're going to be around other people who are in your class. If you go to a retreat, there'll be other people at the retreat. And if you go on a tour, obviously you have a guide and you're going to be taken care of. So they take that first step and a lot of them get hooked, I've seen this quite a bit. And because you've traveled a lot, they'll go on one trip. Maybe they go to Italy to the Amalfi Coast with us, which is my background today. That's Naples, I think.
Nice.
And then, I'll get an email a year later and say, this just happened this morning, actually, from a, a guest who, she was one of our first guests, actually. And she wrote me and said, oh, I'd really love to go on your France trip, but I can't go this year. So maybe next year, because I'm going to Morocco. And since our trip a few years ago, she had been just traveling all over the place. I have received texts and emails from her. Oh, she's down in South America. She went to Peru. And it's like, yeah, I can do this. Maybe start small, start with something that feels like, okay, that feels more accessible. And then all of a sudden she's in Morocco, which I think would have been a stretch for her in the beginning, and now she works doing it. What I love most is to get the email where I'll get a picture or a text message. I'll get a picture of two guests who have met on the trip. So maybe they both did the Camino de Santiago with us and they hit it off. And then a year later, I'll get a picture of them walking the PCT or something. And hey, we're still in touch. We were thinking about how we met, which is through you. That is what I want. So maybe you start alone, but the thing is that there are all these other women out here who want to meet other solo women travelers. It's not, you are not alone if that's something that you want to do. It's super common. Even if you have a lot of friends, maybe back home you have a lot of friends and you go on walks, you go out to dinner, that those friends may not want to go to Italy with you yet, or they can't walk the Camino because they're not fit enough. But there's plenty of other people who do want that, and a whole other network of friendships that are out there and community that is accessible to people. I think you and I were talking a little bit about the people you meet when you travel.
Right.
And how transformative that can be. And I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, when I travel alone, I meet all kinds of people because when you're alone, people will come up to you, they'll start talking to you. Sure. And that's not true if you're with your spouse or with a group of girlfriends necessarily, right?
Correct.
And you just feel like you need to make the effort as well, right? When you're traveling alone.
I feel like I have met so many amazing people. If I've felt alone, sometimes lonely, no question, but more vulnerable, I'm more likely to take that time to debrief with a stranger who's also traveling. And the next thing you know, a connection, a friendship is forged. And that's been at basically almost every continent, that I've met someone that I'm still in touch with today. And there was one particular trip I went on where then I met up with several of the people I met at their places of, wherever they live, the countries that they reside in, and vice versa. So it is that in itself, that connection, that curiosity about someone else's life and what brought them to travel alone and all of it. It just can be a beautiful thing. So I like that you bring that up.
Right. Now you have this network of friends all over the place, like you
Yeah.
said, all over the world, in different perspectives. And you mentioned why people are traveling and what's the motivation. And I mentioned that some people are just tired of waiting. And it's like,
Yeah.
time is short. Let's go. I want to see Italy while I can. I want to walk the Camino while I still can, while my knees are up for it or whatever. But I've also seen a lot of just big life changes will spur people to come and take a trip. I especially see that with the Camino because it has a spiritual aspect to it and people are
Mhm.
drawn to that. But with other trips too, just taking a trip to Costa Rica can be a big stretch for people as well. I'll see it with divorce. So a big change like a divorce or a death. Illness is another one. So I've seen, a lot of recovering cancer or something really, big like that. And a milestone birthday. Okay,
Yes.
I'm turning 60, I'm turning 50. I want to go and really do something big for this, I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to take that trip to Spain. Our career change. So sometimes people will just say, I've been laid off or I've quit and now what's next? I need some time to clear my head and maybe a trip will give me a new perspective. And I think, travel's not going to solve all your problems, but it can give you a different way to look at life and at yourself for a little break from the routine.
Absolutely. It is no substitute for any kind of therapy, but it can be therapeutic. And I feel like once I learned to trust myself more when I was traveling alone, and if a disaster happened and I didn't die, that I felt like, okay, this is fine. It doesn't solve everything. And I am still the same clumsy person who has no sense of direction if I'm walking around South America as I am in my own home state. And one's not necessarily that much easier than the other. So I may as well take the show on the road. Like, it's fine. The world is, we've got a whole bunch of people we have yet to meet, and why not? And so rather than wait for the perfect to align, it's wonderful that you make opportunities for people who are pivoting or who just want to do finally what they've been meaning to get to.
Yeah, it's a gift that a lot of women finally choose to give themselves. Whether you're going on a group trip or just going on a trip by yourself, whatever, just giving yourself that time away from whatever your responsibilities are and respecting the fact that you have this desire and this dream to see something and to make it happen. You mentioned a little bit back about the first reaction is it's dangerous, and I knew you were going to say that because that is our reaction. Even
Mhm.
as women, we are worried about, is it dangerous in a different way than men are. And I've traveled all over the place by myself. And yes, there have been some situations that are a little dodgy, but more often than not, my experience has been that people want to help me and are kind. And, you know, it's not scary once you're out there doing it. Now you have to know, there's some things that you need to know to keep yourself safe. Absolutely, that's true. But you can learn those things. And the other part is kind of like with my Spanish and failing. I feel like failing over and over again with Spanish. And then finally, I finally get it. That's true with travel. You will fail. You will make a mistake. You will get food poisoning because you drank the wrong water, or you're gonna lose your wallet, or you miss your flight, or your hotel room is overbooked. I think all these things have happened to me. I'm just listing things that happened to me. If you're somebody take your phone, that happened to me. And guess what? You'll figure it out. Like there are workarounds for all of those scenarios. There are ways to be prepared so you have a plan B if something does go wrong, and you'll figure it out.
Right.
It's gonna
I
be
love that. It is so very true. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be what you need. And I just love that. I like that you give this opportunity. Are you still doing travel writing as well?
I have a newsletter and I have a blog, but I haven't felt, that's one thing that I miss, to tell you the truth. We were talking about writing, and that's my background is in writing and education. And I haven't had a lot of time for that. Honestly, my bandwidth hasn't been there. Running a business has been a lot.
Yes.
And until more recently, I was on a lot of our trips, which I love. I love being with our guests and getting to know them, but just didn't really have the energy to do a lot of writing. I hope it's something that will come back for me. Creativity, that kind of creativity will come back.
Yes. People are always interested in learning about travel writing too. So I think it's great that you still blog and that that's where your roots are. Where can people learn more about how to connect with you? Maybe your writing. I know you've written a guide, you've written a blog, but also your travel company.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come and find us at Bold Spirit Travel. So bold, like to be bold, to be brave, to do something that scares you and go do it anyways, even if you might fail, even if we might be a disaster, even if it's embarrassing, which is all that has happened to me. Just go and do it anyways, because it's going to get better. It'll be easier the next time you do it. So Bold Spirit Travel. Something else that we do that's not even about taking trips, it's about, we do all these travel classes. So for anyone listening who, maybe you are a first time traveler, you're really new to it, or you are worried about safety stuff, or how do I even pack for this? We do some free classes, and you are welcome to attend and just come learn from the pros, learn from my mistakes and mistakes of everybody else on my team, because we have been there. So that's a resource as well. And we put those on Eventbrite so people can find them there.
That's excellent, Regina. That's a wonderful resource. And it's also a great way. People need to hear other people's disaster stories. I think most of us, even if we're traveling to the very next state, we could tell a story about when our luggage didn't arrive or we left our credit card or something. So, and sometimes it could be more serious than that, but we like those stories.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be flying to Europe. It could just be, like you said, going to Las Vegas. I once got on a plane with no wallet at all. Amazingly, they let me on, and it was going to Las Vegas. And I kept reaching for my wallet the whole weekend I was away. It's like, I don't have any. I don't have an ID. Nothing.
Oh, my goodness.
There's a workaround for that at the airport, not for international, but apparently it happens all the time. People show up without their wallet.
And do you show up with mail or what is the workaround?
They were able to find me in some kind of database,
Okay.
give me something at the airport. This was flying from the Pacific Northwest to Las Vegas.
Good.
And then the same thing coming back, because I had to return. I mean, obviously, I was with other people and they've had money. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble. But just imagine somebody listening, this has probably happened. You go to the airport and you realize, I don't have my wallet, which you would think that's like number one thing to bring. And you don't have time to go back and get your wallet and then
Right.
Well, they let me on the plane and there was a workaround for it. And so you just never know. Just ask, I guess. I guess that's the point with that,
I love it. That's a very good tip. Very good tip. We don't get very far without asking. So your website kind of has the umbrella for all of the great things.
It does.
Bold Spirit Travel.
Bold Spirit Travel.
Wonderful. I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm definitely so excited that we made this connection, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lisbeth.